Hello and welcome to day 47 in this quest for a 2000 rating on chess.com. So today it looks like I have a challenge for a 3-day per move game by Chess Streamer 64. I may have to hold off on that if you're watching Chess Streamer 64 because I have two other games that are going on right now that I'm trying to finish. But in the future we'll have to play again. All right, so let's find an opponent for today in this 15-minute game. All right, we have the white pieces, so we'll start with e4 and see how they respond. So it looks like the Sicilian defense here. So we'll play knight to f3. So here, all right, so now they're setting up kind of a dragon defense here. So let's see, what do I want to do? I could set up this Maroczy bind type setup here. All right, so I kind of messed up. I wanted to, so I'm already out of my normal opening here. All right, well, let's see. Guess we have to move that to there. And then, well, this pretty much has to go there. Let's see, we'll go here to keep his bishop out of the game there. All right, so now we can go here. And let's see. Guess we can try and go after his fianchettoed bishop here. So that is an option. And we probably should castle as well. So I think we need to get to work on that. All right, so this game kind of went out of my opening book or out of my opening repertoire. I kind of messed up here. So, all right, so are they looking to try and push forward here? All right, well, if they do that, what do we want to do? Guess we can just go there and try and trade out his bishop. Come on. Try to move that. All right, now he could just retreat, which he does. Okay. So, well, if he's going to do that, we'll go back to there. And then now we want to go ahead and castle. All right. Well, we might as well go ahead and castle there. All right. That is interesting. So now we could possibly just pin. Do we try to pin that knight? Pin the knight to the queen. Then jump our other knight up here. All right, well, Now we can put that knight up into the position there. Okay, so they capture. Now we can run down this other knight, I guess. So we capture that way. Then if he jumps forward, I guess we're going to go ahead and capture him. And all right, so I guess we're doing that. Okay, well that is interesting that he decided to go that way. So now what do we do? Well, we should probably, let's see. Well, I guess we could attack here. I don't know. This is kind of tricky. We need to watch out here. If we do that, it'll just undouble his pawns. So, yeah, maybe we just go after this unprotected piece there. And it gives our bishop an option to jump back here and help cover our king. And we have to watch out for a possible sacrifice here of sacrificing the bishop, and then okay, so he just decides to protect that. Okay, so now what should we try to do here? Let's see. Do we go after that bishop? Well, yeah, let's see if we can get rid of this bad bishop. Get rid of the bad bishop. Okay, so man, I don't know. This is looking crazy. This is looking crazy. But if we do that, it'll kind of break apart his structure here. All right, so now, well, we should probably try and go there. All right. So what will work now? Oh, I guess we could take that, then go after that pawn. So we'll go there. Then we can go after that. We'll go after the king with a check and snatch up this pawn. Whew, I don't know. That does kind of leave me open, though. So we snatch that up. And then, what do we do? Might as well check the king again. with that. Now we can go there and threaten a mate. All right, well, sorry, I'm so focused on this. I'm probably not talking as much as I should be. All right, well, we might as well double up here. Or do we just attack? So we'll go ahead and do that. And they resigned because if they go ahead and block, which is the only thing they can do, well, then they have to block with the rook. Then we capture. They would have to capture. And then we pick this off, the other rook. All right, so we'll do a game review here. Let's see. Oh, man. Played at a 94.7% accuracy there. So that just shows you how my game's kind of... I would probably be higher rated if I wasn't so erratic. I have like a really good game and then I can have a bad game. Like some people are more steady in their accuracy and throughout their games, but I don't know, I'm kind of up and down by quite a bit. So I played at 94.7 versus their 82.8. It looks like I had one great move and only one inaccuracy. They had one inaccuracy and 3 mistakes. So we'll definitely have to take a look at those. It says, good job building up a lead and not letting up. All right, so let's run through this quick review. The computer blasts through everything. Here, I don't know. I played this a little differently. I set up, this is what's called the Maroczy bind, where I believe it was maybe played by or invented by or named after a chess master named Geza Maroczy, I think. That is his first name. But anyway, you place a pawn on c4 and e4 in the Sicilian defense, and it tries to block him from being able to push his d pawn to d5, which is a goal for black in the Sicilian defense, is to try and free up his cramped position by pushing his d pawn up to d5. So by having both of these pawns here, that really makes it hard, difficult for black to be able to push that pawn to d5. But he played this hyper-accelerated dragon variation. So, I don't know, this can be dangerous. The game immediately spun out into something that I wasn't as familiar with, and definitely not part of my opening repertoire. So anyway, let's move on. I'll dig into this more, especially when we look at the analysis. Man, the computer just blasted through these moves. So here, this f5 move, it looks like it was a mistake. Best was to just keep these pawns around your king and start pushing here on the queen side and trying to gain space, which is what I was kind of waiting for. I thought, oh man, he's going to start just pushing these pawns forward here and tearing up the queen side with this dark squared bishop just aiming down through here. So luckily he didn't do that. And let's see what happened next here. So we traded off, and now this is a mistake, giving up this defensive bishop here. So it looks like just bishop to f6 would have been a better move, which, I don't know, I guess tries to hold the game a little bit. You keep this defensive bishop. Now his king is just hanging out in the open there. So we captured and then started attacking. And let's see, I believe they resigned right around here because now it looks like they should have just traded off queens, especially with this attack going. But I guess they didn't want to do that. So that would have alleviated a lot of the pressure if he just tried to trade queens off. And then I have this open king here, and this weak pawn. My pawns are weak, so I don't know. This was kind of a crazy game. All right, so this was the great move that the computer liked. Now white is ahead by +5. Getting ready to swing over here. I thought, well, maybe he'll play this move to slow me down. But then I guess I could check him and then pick that pawn off. He would grab this pawn in the center and have this strong pawn formation. So the game could have turned out much differently. So let's see here. We checked, and that's where he resigned. So this says you really outplayed your opponent in that one. You played a bit better than your opponent in the opening, and you overpowered your opponent in the middle game. So it looks like I played at a 2350 level. So, that's definitely above my average for sure. But, I'll take a good win like that. So, and my rating jumped back up over 1600. So we're at 1607 now. So hopefully I can have a few more good games like that to try and get my rating going back up. All right, so we played 94.5% accuracy in the opening versus their 91.9. And then my middle game was 94.8 versus their 73.7. So let's take a look at this. Now we can go back, look at the analysis, and find out what we missed, what we could have done better, what our opponent should have done. Okay, so I played e4 and they play c5, the Sicilian defense. So the reason you play c5, it's a counter-attacking opening. You control this d4 square. So if white at some time in the future pushes his d pawn to d4, you capture a strong central pawn with this less valuable flank pawn. So that's usually a good trade for black. But usually black will end up with a slightly cramped position because you have this e pawn here 2 squares forward, and they usually hold their pawns back. Sometimes they could go to e5 with their pawn, but then that could make this d pawn a little bit weak or backward in some of the variations. All right, so we play knight to f3, which can allow us to push this d pawn here to d4. And if we were to do that immediately, well, then they could just capture, if our knight wasn't here. If we just played d4 instead, they could capture, our queen would recapture, and then they could develop a knight and chase our queen. So by developing our knight first, now we can push this d pawn forward, and if they capture, our knight will capture. And so then if they develop their knight, we're not as worried about it because our queen is guarding that knight. So in the game, they play this. This is, I believe, the hyper-accelerated dragon variation of the Sicilian, even though here it says the ready opening kingside fianchetto variation. But I believe this is called the hyper-accelerated dragon variation. You've probably heard of the dragon variation in the Sicilian, and then I think there's an accelerated dragon, and then this is the hyper-accelerated dragon. So it looks like the move that's recommended is c3 here, with bishop to c4 being the second most recommended move by the computer, and then d4 is third. So we played this move, c4, which I mentioned before is the Maroczy bind setup, where you try and prevent this d pawn from moving to d5. So they go ahead and develop this powerful bishop, just aiming down through the center here. I played people who used this setup before, and it was pretty dangerous. And they gave me all kinds of problems. They develop their knight up here. They bring their queen down here, and then the bishop and the queen are piling up on this. And it can, this game could have gone a lot crazier, in a crazier direction, because I messed it up. I need to go back and look at the opening repertoire. So anyway, I played this, and the computer already doesn't like that. It wants d4 here immediately. Because if we don't play d4, well, then they can play knight to c6 and make it hard for us now to push our d pawn forward, because they would have the pawn, the bishop, and the knight all guarding this, and we would only have the queen and the knight. We wouldn't be able to develop this completely. So that inaccuracy, they recommend an immediate d4 here. And then we would probably have a capture. Well, then the knight would capture. And now there are different options here. It looks like the most recommended is this, immediately putting pressure on this knight with the bishop and the knight piling up, and you just have the queen, the only protector here. So then it looks like bishop to e3 is the best maneuver, but then it can really get dangerous here. We have knight to f6, attacking this pawn, knight to c3, and now the recommendation is just knight. Oh, this is interesting. Knight to g4 here. The knight moves to this square unprotected, but if the queen captures, then you have a trade-off here in the center. So anyway, that's how the game could go. In the game that we played, I played knight to c3, so maybe this confused the opponent. I didn't play how this hyper-accelerated dragon variation of the Sicilian normally is played, so they were probably confused, and maybe that contributed to their play. So knight to c6 here. So now we have d3, and it says that's the best move, so we just fortify our pawns in the center. We can't push to d4 because all these pieces are piling up on that square. So now he plays this, the best move, d6. Now he can develop his bishop. So I play my pawn here. It says b2 would have been better, but at least here I keep him away from my knight, which I want to keep to be able to guard this square from this knight jumping into that outpost. So knight to f6 here, just continuing development, getting ready to castle. And the computer said that that move was okay. So now it looks like black is ahead in this position. And with e6, it would have been even better. So, probably e6, then moving your knight here to e7, because then you could maybe jump to here. Jump this knight into the position, and then if your other knight was on e7 instead, it could follow in behind the knight and jump here to c6. All right. So now we have a bishop developing, but it looks like the computer prefers this bishop move. All right, so they castle. We go ahead and develop our bishop, and now with this move, it says black is still ahead. And now we have this, a6, an inaccuracy. So now the game has jumped in white's favor here by 0.43. So that was an inaccuracy. So better would have been, what, e5 would have been the best move. So let's take a look at that. e5. So now the computer is saying that is best, because now the knight could jump in there, and if we capture with our knight, well, then the pawn would recapture and fork our knight and our bishop. So, that could be dangerous. That knight can just jump in there, and we would have to, I don't know, leave it there until we moved one of these pieces. I guess we could jump our knight up here first and then maybe go after black's knight. But anyway, here it recommends if they would have played e5, it looks like queen to d2 is the most recommended move, because now we create the battery of queen and bishop aimed at the king side here. And one of your goals when your opponent fianchettos a bishop is to possibly trade that bishop out by creating this battery, running your bishop up to h6, and then you can try and trade these bishops off, and it'll leave some weak squares around your opponent's king here, and causing some weaknesses that you may be able to exploit later in the game. All right, so now it recommends this knight to d4 move. So here, what does it recommend? Just castling, it looks like. So castling, and then black would try and gain some space on the queen side. All right, so let's go back to what happened in the game. We go bishop to e3. They play this kind of a passive move. I thought, well, if they're playing a6, their plan is going to be to try and play b5 and start some counterplay on the queen side, maybe put their bishop here and line it up down through the middle. Maybe that's a possibility. So let's see. After a6, we had this queen move. And it looks like the computer prefers d4, saying that's best. The queen move just keeps the game even. But if we play d4, that puts the game slightly in black's favor here. White's favor, excuse me. So now the best move would be to capture with your pawn, trading a less valuable flank pawn for this more valuable central pawn. You would be forced to capture with the knight. And now one thing that a lot of beginners do in the Sicilian is to capture with their knight. If white captures with their knight here on d4 and captures this c6 knight, usually you don't want to do that in the Sicilian, because it'll pull this less valuable pawn, the b pawn, towards the center and just help reinforce black's center, having three pawns here. But with a pawn on c6, it makes it easier to try and push to this d5 square, which is usually a goal of black's in the Sicilian. So here, it looks like the best move, though, is to go ahead and capture. And now you would have to capture with the bishop. Not the queen, of course, because then there could be a discovered attack once this knight moves with the bishop lined up on this d4 square. And now it looks like it would be good to go ahead and push on the queen side here, which is interesting because it looks like you could gain material with capture, capture, and then bishop captures. So I don't know. I mean, but then I guess you have a counterattack possibility. So you move your bishop here and start attacking over in the center. White would want to go ahead and castle. It looks like this pawn will be lost. But now white would have this these two passed pawns over here on the queen side, but black would have this a more powerful pawn center, especially once this pawn is gone. He'll have these two strong pawns in the middle. So another way that the game could have played out. So the dragon in the Sicilian can get really crazy, especially with this, if the position opens up and the strong bishop is aimed down through the center towards the queen side. Anyway, I'm not going to play too much further into this. Let's go back to the game. But the Dragon Sicilian is something you could check out. I would definitely recommend at least trying it to see if you like it at some point when you're trying different chess openings. All right. So queen to d2 was played. Then my opponent develops his rook towards the center here, which he doesn't have many other options. What's he going to do with this rook? Either leave it there. Here, he can start pushing this pawn and it'll be protected by the rook. So now we try and trade off the bishop, but it looks like a better move would have been what? Once again, d4, trying to push that pawn. So maybe, this d4 move is a better move and it's more common. I guess with this closed position, maybe that confused my opponent and he had some difficulty in this variation. So I try to trade off the bishops here, but let's see. Looks like the best move according to the computer is to ignore this and just play e6. Start pushing your pawn in the center here. But he retreats back, and it says that's an excellent move, but white is still a little bit ahead here. So now the game continues with the bishop retreating back. So I don't know, I wasn't sure what to do here. It looks like I should have just left that bishop there and castled. So this was kind of a wasted move. Now with rook to b8, it looks like the game is just even. So let's see here. If I would have left that bishop there, and then, what is my option? Now it's saying a3, maybe to keep this knight out of here, but also castling, which is probably advisable because, you don't want to have your king stuck out in the center too long in case black starts pushing his pawns and opens the center up. Okay, in the game, I retreat back. My opponent develops his bishop finally, even if it is only one square. So now, if this knight moves, he could have a better chance of pushing this forward with the bishop, basically backing everything up here. So once the knight moves, jumps down here somewhere. This pawn can push, which is what I thought my opponent was going to do, try and start attacking on the queen side and keeping this dark squared bishop, which is aiming down towards the queen side as well. All right, so I castle, which is best. They go ahead and push in the center here, but it looks like rook to b8 is better to just get ready to attack like crazy on the queen side here. So let's see here. Rook to b8. At that point, the game would be about even if they played rook to b8. White would just have a slight edge. But here, now they have this weakness. They've given me a an outpost here, although it's guarded by this knight. So I go ahead and pin the knight to the queen. So that's another I don't know, disadvantage or something that is going to give black trouble once they push this pawn up here to e5 and allow me to pin. So this is just another reason that they shouldn't have pushed that pawn, because now the knight is just pinned to the queen. Even though it's guarded by the bishop and the queen, it could cause some issues. So the queen moves out of the pin, and now we jump forward here, putting more pressure on. They capture, which is best. Let me go back and see what the best move here would have been. It looks like, oh man, yeah, and I didn't think about this. It looks like a possible knight to h2 would have been quite a bit better. So I should have done that and then threatened to go up that way. Although he could just push forward here with this pawn and prevent me from going there. So I don't know. Now it's saying bishop to e6 is the best move. But I mean, I guess he could have gone here. That might weaken his king side a little bit, though. Well, let's see what happens if he goes there. What does the computer think about that? Now it's saying f4 would be the best move. Oh man, yeah, you play f4, try and break this open, and then you have the rook putting pressure on that knight. But then again, the knight could retreat back and attack us, and then we would have to retreat. Then what do we do? All right, well, let's see here. Let's see. And we don't want to forget that this battery of queen and bishop is aimed here at this h3 pawn. There could be a bishop sacrifice, but we do have a bishop guarding here, keeping the knight out. So, and now this knight is helping protect the king. Anyway, back to the game. We jumped in this way, which the computer says is still good. And at this point, we're ahead the equivalent of 3/4 of a pawn's worth of material with 0.76. So they attack, getting rid of that strong knight, which is the best move, of course. So now we capture towards the center, so that's best. When you have an option on which direction to capture, it's usually good. Not always, so you need to calculate a little bit, but usually it's better to capture with your flank pawn towards the center. So now we have their knight jumping into the position. So let's see what would have been best for them. Looks like a little bit better may have been the knight jumping back to here to d8. Then maybe pushing this pawn and jumping the knight here, trying to come down into the king side at some point. I don't know that. And it's not much of a difference between knight to d4. So anyway, knight to d4 is still an excellent move. And now our best move is to go ahead and capture, which we do. And here, as I was saying, you have to calculate. Now the better move is to capture with the center pawn. E takes d4, which would help activate this bishop, or excuse me, this rook a little bit more by capture and your bishop. So my opponent, they do pick the best move. So instead of capturing towards the center, they capture with their center pawn, and it gives their rook more scope, their bishop a little bit more scope, and they leave this pawn here to block the c-file. That way a rook can't move here and attack his queen. So multiple reasons why it was better to capture with this e pawn instead of the c pawn, and that's the kind of stuff you have to calculate on a case-by-case basis, in your games to determine what's better. All right, so we play bishop to f4 here, just attacking this unprotected pawn. But it looks like b4 would have been a better move to just try and put some pressure on this pawn here, I guess. And if they capture, well, then you would develop your queen over to here, putting pressure on this pawn that's unprotected. And you could try, well, black probably wouldn't want to capture because then he'd be left with these horrible doubled pawns here. So, maybe if you played b4, he might just fortify with his b pawn. All right, and then let's see. Yeah, that's what it recommends. That if you play b4, then it says b6 is probably going to be played. And then you can play a4, just start gaining space and trying to get something going on the queen side. All right, so now in the game we had this retreat, and now it also says f4 would be good, potentially bringing your rook up here and or just pushing forward and trying to open things up here towards the king. So another possibility. Queen to c7 to protect. Now, once again, it wants this b4 move. But instead, we played bishop to g4. Now here, it says this move is good, but let's see, black's best move would be to just play c4 now. All right, c4. But if he did that, we could go ahead and capture. He would have to capture with his queen, and then we could pick off this pawn. So his second best move, just to capture our bishop and leave us with doubled pawns, which I didn't mind so much because I thought, well, maybe I could use this half open H file for some type of attack. I would have my pawn here on g4, which would help cover f5, so he couldn't, it'd be harder for him to push forward here with this pawn, or his H pawn. All right, so in the game we had, after bishop to g4, f5 here. So this is a pretty big mistake. The game jumps to plus 1.21 in white's favor. Better would have been, now it's saying bishop takes g4. All right. What did they say was best? b5. Now they're saying b5 would have been better. So what if they did that? b5, is it still saying that's best? Yeah, so now it's saying b5 is the best move. And then how should we respond? Looks like a4, just trying to gain some space here. And then forcing them to make a decision on whether to... Well, if they did that, I guess it would double their pawns up over here, but that pawn would be protected. I don't know, tricky stuff. So let's go back. It's saying b5. Maybe let's look at this bishop takes g4 move. Then we would just capture. And now what? Now c4, just pushing forward here. Then it looks like b4 is the recommended move. So queen to b4. piling up on this backwards D pawn here. All right, so back to the game. We played bishop to g4, thinking they might capture. They would get rid of this bad bishop, and maybe that's why they didn't capture, because this is a pretty bad bishop because it's blocked in by all these pawns on the light squares here. And they could get ready to just attack us with h5, although that might weaken their position a little bit. So they go this way, a mistake. So now the best thing to do is capture with our pawn, which is what we do. And now they should capture with their bishop. Also, they could have just played h5. So the best move was capturing with the bishop, it looks like. So let's go back and look at this h5 move. If they play h5, then we have to retreat like this. Then they can pick this pawn off. And now it looks like g4 is best, chasing that bishop. So g4. Best here is to just retreat, not to break your pawns open more, but retreat up to d7. And now rook at a to e1 to try and fight for control of this open file. All right, so I guess I could play this out a little bit. So fighting for the open file, and now capture with the pawn. Rook takes e1. We recapture, and now rook to e8, fighting for that open file again. Oh, now it's saying rook to f8 would have been better, because here, well, now it's saying b4 again. It just wants that, it really likes that b4 move. Okay, well, let's finish this game out. Back to what happened. So we capture this way. They capture with their bishop. We go ahead and capture, which the computer says is best, because now we break open their king side even more. Now we have the rook moving to the open file, but it likes the queen side rook moving there instead. So looks like c4 is maybe their best move, or queen to f7 coming over to help protect the king side over here. So instead they play this, another mistake. So the best move, now it's saying queen to f7 is probably the best move. Let's see. Maybe it's not sure. Now the computer is also saying c4. But now it says queen to f7. So I guess the computer is just not sure here. Because here we should play bishop to h6. And anyway, I don't want to dig too deep into moves that we didn't play. So rook to f1, or sorry, rook at f to e1. They block with their bishop. We go ahead and capture. They capture. We check, which is the best move. Now they go into the corner. We pick off this pawn. So let's look at the material here. We're ahead by what? 1 pawn. So we have 7 pawns to their 6. Their king is weak though. Ours is open, so I thought, well, here I'm thinking they'll just attack me with a rook. Rook to f8, attacking me. Well, now I see why they didn't do that. Because if they attack, I can just capture this pawn with check, trade off queens, have a rook up here, protecting this pawn. But at least it would have sent them into an endgame. All right, let's see here. They move here, attacking the pawn, which is best. And now the computer really likes queen to h5. But we play this, queen to f6, check. We're still ahead by 1.79, but it looks like rook to e4 would have been even better. So now they make a mistake. King to g8, and now it's +5 in white's favor. So what should they have done here? Looks like the best move, and maybe the only one that works, is that. Which, I mean, I guess that's their only two options, to move the king because you're in check, or block with the queen. So now, recommended is retreating back to f3. Then the game, I don't know, would have been a lot closer. Let's see. Yeah, we should definitely try and, if the game went to this position, we should definitely try and keep the queens on board. But I don't know, because then he's going to have a big counterattack with his rooks piling up here and his queen. He could try and move here, threaten a mate in 1 on g2. So that would have been a lot more dangerous than what happened in the game. So once we checked and he just moves his king, well, now, let's see, it looks like rook to e4 is the best move, which is what we did, because, and it says this is a great move, because now we're just threatening a mate in 1 here on g4. And it looks like h5 is possible, but then we could just check him, and then maybe pick that pawn off. But let's see, queen to d7. Says that is best. Queen. Oh, okay. Queen to d7. And then once they move here, you would have to sacrifice your queen for the rook, and then white would just be winning. So in the game, they played this, trying to block. So we go ahead and check, and then they resigned here, because the game may have continued with rook to g7. And so that was their only option. So if we go back, the queen is covering everything around the king. So the only way to block is with that. Well, now you can just go ahead and capture, check. If the king moves to h8, there's a mate in 2. So let's see if we can find that move. So a mate in 2 here if they go here. So with that, that would be a horrible mistake, because we have a discovered attack. So we could go here, capturing the queen with a discovery, and then the king would have to move, and then we would have mate here. So that's one possibility. But they would most likely have to play the other way. So let me go back here. After we check them, they block, we capture, the queen would capture, but now we can just pick off their other rook over here. So, and that would be the best move, to just go ahead, pick that off with check, and now they have to block too. So, that would really be terrible. They have to block, or they could move here, but then we just check them, they move their king, and we pick the queen off. But either way, we're trading. So, I don't know. Now it's saying to just go queen to d7. So this is what the computer is saying. Queen to d7, c4, check, and now queen to f7. It says to keep this queen, but why even do that? So an easier way to win, let's see. At this point, you could probably just go ahead and capture here. Then once they capture, well, now your rook will just tear up the position. Go here, immediately attacking this weak pawn. And now, if the king tries to come down into the position, well, then you can just snatch this up. If he tries to harass your bishop, or excuse me, your rook, you can just push this pawn and protect it. Then your king can march over here and start, helping stop what's going on with this pawn majority. Anyway, interesting game. So if you stuck around for the entire game and the review and analysis, I thank you. Please like and subscribe for those of you who haven't, to support this channel. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions, or requests for chess videos that you would like to see in the future. You can leave those at any time, and I'll try and work on those videos if it's something that looks interesting. So thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.